Well, hello there. My name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to this. It's a podcast, and it's all about the Irish League, where refereeing is once again in the spotlight, and not for the right reasons. The ghost goal of Windsor Park might have further implications than just being a horror show of a call. What chain reaction could it set off in regards to a potential refereeing revolution here in Northern Ireland? We're going to talk about that, as well as all the latest action across the league on this, your fresh out the box weekly edition of Kick and Match. For some teams, we're at that big point in the season, 6 games in. Some are to the 5th and a 6th of the season already gone, plenty still to go. But you'll not be surprised, some of the main talking points that you know and love have reared their heads again, and you know you've come right here to hear about them all. And it's going to be in the company of Mr. Ali McCalmont.
Hi Peter, how are you, mate? You all good? Glad to be back again.
I am keeping very well. What a start to the season before we get into the nip and tuck of other things for your Carrick boys. Surprise team of the season, many would argue.
I would say probably they've bust a few coupons over the first 4 weeks of the season for sure. None more so than week one, and actually that might be, we'll look back on it probably as the real turning point was in the first 30 minutes at Seaview, because it could have gone completely pear-shaped. And obviously turned that around on that day, and since then it's been pretty good, to be fair. They've played quite well. Not just the results, have actually played quite well until we'll probably get to it Saturday, where that was probably our lowest sort of performance wise on Saturday. As I say, we'll probably get to the nitty and gritty of it, but yeah, I actually went the game on Tuesday against Bangor. I thought we played some really good football on Tuesday against Bangor, and that was the B team really, with 7 or 8 changes. So yeah, look, it's been a really encouraging start. We're sitting on 10 points from 5 games. So if we beat the Blues in our game in hand, we'll be near the top.
Well, you are up towards the higher end of the table. I think if we were to reflect on the weekend that we've had, despite the fact that some of them haven't played the full allocation of games they could have played by choice, I would say as well, we look to have got a pack emerging, the pack of Linfield, Larne, Glentoran and Coleraine. How long they can continue as a pack, we'll have to see. How far away they can push on is remain to be seen, because just the quirk of the early season, fixtures fall right, they don't fall right. We'll just have to see how they settle towards that main big stick, I think, the big marker that we have around 10 or 12 games. But we're not going to start with Carrick. We're going to start at Windsor Park, where everybody expects us to start, and what will be one of the more, I reckon, memorable games of the season. Not for what we saw across the 90 minutes, for a very specific period of time just after the hour mark, where all this talk around referees and questioning some of the decisions that are made week to week, match to match, all came together. And I wonder how much of a catalyst it will be, or how much it will be referenced going forward when we're discussing maybe one part of the league's push towards modernity that maybe has been pushed to the side ever so slightly. Kirk Miller breaks through against Portadown, 1 goal to the good. He slots it across to Matthew Fitzpatrick in the box, challenged by McKinnon, and it looks to be a knock-on that's going goalwards. Excellent save low from Aaron McCarry in the Portadown goal. I was high up in the rafters at Windsor Park. I saw this live, and what I saw was an excellent save, gobbled up, danger, held at bay, and Portadown tried to pick it up and go again as they tried to get an equaliser. But between the referee, Declan Hassan, and the linesman on the side, a goal was given. Video evidence afterwards suggested that what many people in the ground believe that they saw was confirmed, and that was that ball had not in fact crossed the line. The interesting part of this is that then Gerald Lawlor comes out the next day on Sunday with his big statement pointing towards how goal line technology or some form of VAR or video refereeing is in the future potentially for this league. So many things all wrapped into one there, Ali. I mean, for you, what did you make of the goal looking back on it?
Well, I think you summed it up pretty well there for the majority of everybody. You know,
It's weird to call it a goal because
yeah,
obviously it was
it
given
was
as a
given as a
goal.
goal, so we've got to take it as that. And as you well know, Peter, I'm a fantasy football man, and that goes down as a goal in fantasy football as it does in the. So Fitzpatrick will pick up his points for that, despite the fact that it got nowhere near the line really. And look, I'm never a big one for people saying, it was always a bit of a bugbear with mine when people say you got to look at players' reactions and things like that, because over time players' reactions will pick up, and they'll pick up on these things, and if it's a player reaction thing, then they'll start cheating. So, but
There'll be 30 yellow cards
yeah,
a game.
but on Saturday, I mean, you can tell. I mean, you can clearly tell when a goalkeeper knows McCarry. Look, let's say it. Our McCarry's not the most sort of placid guy around the park. He can lose his rag, as we've seen over the. But you saw him, hands to the head, all that sort of stuff. He knew, and even Fitzpatrick's reaction even more so. He knows it's not a goal. He knows himself, so he's not running off to the corner flag. He's and you can see his sort of, when he looked round and it had been given, he hardly even gave a celebration or anything like that. So look, it was one of those things that how the referee and the linesman have come to that sort of decision. I know you can't go on sort of reactions all the time, but just the whole surroundings of what happened, and even going across and having a chat. Are you sure 100%? Maybe that chat did take place, but you know, is there any doubt in your mind that this is going to cross the line given what you were looking at? Maybe that conversation could have been had. Maybe it did, and they've just gone ahead with it anyway. But look, it didn't. It didn't look like, you know, we'll probably on the VAR thing, but in my sort of sport of cricket, it didn't look out. It didn't look out at all, and sort of, you know, when you're in that position, that it didn't look like a goal. So look, it's a difficult one in terms of, if you haven't got the old watch that they have in the Premier League to tell you, you've got to make a split decision. But just everything going on for me, it didn't look like a goal, and all that was going on. And the chat with the linesman, as I say, might have cleared that up.
Without going into detail of what Gerald Lawlor said, and we'll get into that, I do think it's important to say that, you know, there's individuals here involved who I think probably are looking back and see that they made a mistake. How impactful was it on the result of the game is questionable. I think, on the basis of play that I saw, that Linfield would have won the game overall anyway. It comes at a bad time for Portadown, because if you're a Portadown fan, you'll argue, look, we go a goal down, we try and then attack and take it to Linfield. They did have a couple of chances, and 2-0 down at Windsor Park. Not many teams are coming back from that with whatever it is, you know, half an hour to go, and how well Linfield were playing in that second half. But the referee and the officials involved, they'll no doubt feel like they've made a mistake, and there's no point just totally getting a pile on here for someone who perhaps will admit openly that they've made a mistake in real time. Referees make mistakes. We all make mistakes in life. I think what many people will ask here is, you know, from a decision-making point of view, because we can argue about referees' decisions week in and week out, and every little decision will have some impact on the game. And we could sit here and talk about penalty decisions, handball decisions, red card decisions, and we often do. But on this occasion, I think people feel particularly frustrated, and it's why I've seen quite significant attention and vigorous commentary from people online, is that, one, they feel this is the straw that's breaking the camel's back for refereeing decisions, and two, you have to be so sure for a goal. A yellow card, it can be, you know, one way or the other. To give a goal, you have to be really sure. And I know it's easy to say, I saw it, and you think you saw something different. But in the end, it wasn't really that close, I believe. And seeing it live in person, it did not look close. My angle was not the angle that the two referees had. But I just think what is most surprising to people is that they were so sure, they were so confident, and it's that with without any sort of reasonable doubt that it crossed the line, and that's where people have frustrations with this judgment, where we can all feel like we see different things. I've give assists to other players. I did it on Saturday on the radio, okay, but to go that 100% cross the line when it was never near, I think that's a tough one for a lot of people to swallow.
Yep, I think I totally agree with that. And again, just the parlance of my other sport, cricket, it would be sort of an umpire sort of being a what we would call a not out merchant. In other words, you've got to be absolutely 100% sure to give this guy, because once you give him out, that's it done. So for me, that's the analogy I would use here as well. If let's say that ball had crossed the line by 3 or 4 inches and the referee doesn't give a goal, you're going to get away with that more than you do with this.
Yeah, he can't call something that he doesn't 100%
So
see.
basically, what I'm saying is that if he sticks, your position should be, your default position should be, unless I am 100% sure here, both of us, then we can't give that. And there was a little break as well. There was a little break in between where maybe they could have got together, as I've said. So that to me, I agree with what you're saying. That's caused them more frustration, in that you should be a little bit of a not out merchant, to use the analogy again. Make sure that you know that that is definitely crossed the line before you give this, because it's easier to be found wrong if the ball has just crossed the line. Now, I know Linfield fans on that day, if it was them that had lost a goal, but for me, it's less of a pile on, if you know what I mean, in terms of that. So you got to be 100% sure when you're given a goal, which means so much in a game of football.
And I have definitely been at matches where I have felt that a ball has clearly crossed the line and the
Definitely.
referee hasn't given it,
Definitely.
and you're frustrated, saying you have to call that, you have to be able to see that. How can I see it? And that is frustrating for sure. But in this occasion, you've wrapped it up neatly there. It's because it wasn't. I understand that. Look, it was still within whatever it is, a couple of inches, half foot, whatever, of the line, but that whole ball has to cross it, and there was bodies in front of him. And I'm an NFL fan as well, which constantly uses video technology, and you can argue and it's get slowed down to the nth degree, and you can get caught up in, did he catch it, did he not, football move, all those things. But the one thing that really kind of brings it together is that the call on the pitch, or on the field, I guess, in that sport, because we are going to get on a video refereeing here. If there was some form of video refereeing in the Irish League, you would look at that and go, there is enough reasonable doubt here, or enough to overturn it. Undisputable, you might say. I think if that was viewed, it would 100% be overturned. Now, if it's a situation where the camera blocks and you can't see it, because I don't think we're going to get one of these watches, I doubt, but I'm not a video referee technology expert. But it impacts the game. But I think the biggest part of that is that is unlikely to have an influence. It didn't have an influence in that game, I felt, over the long run. It's unlikely to have a difference at the title race. But more than anything, it's a bad look on the league.
Definitely bad look on the league. And just at the minute, the way other leagues are going, obviously looking at the Premier League in England, as much, it's week in, week out there at the minute, and we'll probably, as you say, talk about the VAR that Gerald Lawlor's brought up. It's continuing on there, despite the fact that VAR has been in for many years. In fact, it's probably a lot worse now. So yes, it's not a great look for the league, and I'm not a big one for sort of after games getting into referees and things like that. I know everybody says that, but we all do it. We all do it. I mean, one of the worst ones, you covered it a couple of weeks back, was the red card for Glenavon a couple of weeks back. I didn't think it was a red card in any way, shape, or form, and obviously they looked at that afterwards. But that doesn't help on the day. Glenavon have gone on to lose the game on that day, so they can't get the points back for that. Irrespective, you don't get a replay, you just get your player back. So little things like that wasn't a great decision. And then it just, for me, becomes a bit of a snowball effect. And what will basically happen now is everybody next week will be looking for another poor decision, whether it be a really poor one or just a normal poor one. They'll look for a decision and highlight that again. Every manager will start to pile in now. And it'll just, for me, it'll snowball now a little bit. And Look, again, there's another thing I don't really like. Always people always say referees should come out and explain their decisions, and I get that. I get that. My bugbear with that is, as soon as a referee explains a decision, then we'll pile into that. Why that was wrong and all that sort of stuff. But on this particular occasion, uh, you would give the referee maybe an opportunity to come on and just apologise and say, like, I mean, he'll know. There's no doubt that the referee and his linesman will know that they've got that one wrong. But protocol says don't go out and say anything because you'll create more difficulty. But in this particular occasion, because it was just so clear and obvious that it might have been worthwhile just for the officials to come out and say, look, hands up, we made a bit of a mistake there, and that might have put a line under that one. For me now, it's just going to continue. And next week, as I say, we'll be looking for another decision in a particular game, whether it be one or two that affect the game, and then it'll just keep going. Then I know we're going to probably get on to Gerald Lawlor's comments, but that's exactly why VAR is in the Premier League right now, because years before it came in, every week, Match of the Day, Sky Sports, whatever, they'd pick out every single decision and complain about it. And therefore, the powers that be went, well, we've got to do something about this, and brought in video referee. And obviously, we all know how that's gone. And it's not been the success that everybody wants. But I've got a couple of theories on that maybe. But it's not been the success. And as I say, whether it comes into the Irish League in some form, I don't think it's going to fix it because of the game that we have, the particular game that we have.
One angle to all this outburst is that I think we could potentially, and we might not, but we could now potentially see a complete reverse of the way things have been going from the referee fraternity. Because if you've seen the reaction to the Lombardo red card, you see now the reaction to this, which, the red cards and penalties and stuff like that, you can get caught up in, I saw this, I believe that force here. I think this decision, the ghost goal of Windsor, whatever it'll be called, it's because it's just such a big human error, and it's a yes or no. We know what he believed he saw. He believed he's between him and the linesman, whoever made the call, and it wasn't instant. It felt as though from Hassan in the middle, it seemed like it came from the linesman, and it took that second. That's why when you watch it back, you kind of go, there's a bit of a second, and then whoa, what's hold on? When they came to me in the radio, it was me going, there's been a goal, and it was me going, well, there has been a goal. And look, I could have got it wrong. I felt in a weird position saying, because I imagine that would cross the line very easy, and on a split second, I went, hasn't crossed the line. People like, that guy on the radio doesn't know what it is. So even I have to kind of make that judgment of how strongly, because I could have easily went, goal here, Fitzpatrick, away you go. And looked, good save, but it went in. The guy have to make that call, so they have to make that call, but that is their job ultimately at the end of the day. They're not doing it for the good of their health. Let's get on to this Gerald Lawlor statement, because I think many people are very interested by the fact that he decided to make it. So he posted this on Sunday. No doubt the incident with the second goal at Windsor yesterday was a howler. Frustrating, and it shouldn't have happened, but it did. Before jumping on those involved, let's remember they're human. I agree with this sentiment here. They've got feelings, families, and it's easy for faceless accounts to pile in, criticise, and of course, be abusing. I'll say this. Recently, over the past few weeks, I've had more of the accounts that he's described strangely just picking fights. I don't know why. I've annoyed them somehow, but my goodness, I have been hitting that mute button like it's going out of fashion. Because see if you comment at someone like me that's involved in football, or even these swearing, and I'm like, what are you doing? We do not need these people in our lives. Anyway, I totally agree with that. It's this person's made a mistake, or if he hasn't, so what? Like, you don't go around shouting people's jobs. Credit Al Curry too for how professional he was in his post-match interviews. One of them with me. Honestly, I've seen more good performances from the refs this season than bad ones, but yes, mistakes have happened. We all love giving our opinions, and that's a part of football. But as authorities, we have a responsibility to make sure lessons are learned, improvements are made, and referees get the support they need. Mistakes can actually open the door for change. As a league, we'll try to sit down with the Irish FA to talk through this. Personally, I think it's time for a fresh structure for our refs, proper investment, and while not always popular, maybe technology must now be seriously considered. Here's the fulcrum moment. I think it's being pushed forward more than ever before. What's the timeline? We don't know. What's the cost? Not a clue. How does it all work together? Don't ask me. But it's clear. It's in our future some way, somehow.
That's a statement coming from the top, the absolute top. And when the person at the top makes a statement like that, they don't do it lightly. They know that the likes of myself, yourself, all the different podcast media outlets out there are gonna look at that statement and dissect it because it's coming from the top. It's not coming from a sort of person three, four ranks to below. This is the guy at the top, and he's basically saying it's time to start looking at it. Now, by saying it's time to start looking at it, he means we are already looking at this. Whether or not it's going to be coming in the next minute or so, but he means we've already been looking at this to see if this is coming in. Now, I think there's got to be we got to make a complete distinction here between VAR, video assisted referee, and goal line technology in this particular circumstance. Goal line technology's been in for a lot longer than the actual VAR now. Obviously, you just reference it, the watches and things like that they have in Premier League. That all is all technically based on Hawkeye sort of technology where they can sort of have a laser down the line and all that kind of stuff. Whether or not we've got the cash to do something like that, I don't know. But that's basically what I think he's initiating there, because it doesn't mean we have to go all in that everything has to be VAR. And you're right, monetary values. I mean, we're not a league flushed with cash left, right, and centre. I mean, you know, it's difficult at times to see where the money's going to come from. So if that's got it brought in, there are all sorts of sort of technical things that you need at grounds. That's why, again, referencing England, in the FA Cup, some grounds have it, some don't. When you play in the FA Cup, it's not every game. It's only games with two Premiership clubs, I think. So then there's the argument of we're playing a competition here with half in, half out, and that sort of stuff. So if you're going to go, it has to be every ground. You've got to have it. And, I think it's going to be difficult to put in the whole VAR thing. But to go back to the actual statement itself, it's coming from the top. So I think they're already, the wheels are in motion, put it that way, I think, for some sort of help for the referees. But again, this is what was meant to come in, help for the referees. And I think just football itself is a different sport to every other sport in terms of assisted referees. I think football has its own little issues with it, and it might cause more issues than it would solve.
I know plenty of the discussions around VAR and video referees have been had amongst fans who support higher end football, Premier League football. But what are the big frustrations? What are the big drawbacks that fans are going to dislike about this idea? If the idea is that some form of help for the referees could cut out this type of decision making, what's the big issue?
Yeah, I think you've almost hit the nail on the head there. Then that you fans want help for referees until it's not their team. It's too tribal. Football is just too tribal for this to come in, and that's the actual crux of why VAR doesn't work in football. Every other sport that I've seen, and I'm very involved in cricket, obviously it's got a lot of technology involved. Now, to be fair, it is a lot of line decisions and factor fiction. You know what I mean? It's not, is that a foul? Is it not? Whereas a little bit of opinion. Tennis has it in, rugby has it in, and pretty much all sports have some sort of assisted technology now. But every other sport, I feel, accepts that this is here to try and help the officials that are actually doing the job. Football, I don't think we accept that this is here to try and help the officials. I think it's here and it's created a bit of another layer of opinion in that, they don't just say, right, for example, the offside rule that's now in, there's semi-automated offside rule in the top leagues. We still complain about it. If it's just offside, we still complain about it, even though it's semi-automated. That's not right. That can't be right. So this is technology to its, but if it goes against your team, then there's different lines drawn on. So we'll always have something to complain about for me, and whatever it may be, and that to me is the difference. That other sports, it's not as tribal. I mean, again, I'll go back to cricket again. I've seen a lot of decisions in cricket where you think, "Oh, hang on, that can't be right," or they've got that wrong, but they kind of drop it straight away. Football, we do this kind of thing. We go on and on and on because it goes against your team. It just becomes tribal, and I just don't think, no matter what you do in football, that people will accept it.
We're in a moment of flux when it comes to refereeing in this country, as we all heard a month ago, the former IFA's head of refereeing, Mike Riley, he stepped down. He was someone who was a proponent of VAR, but then you look online and you see, even as recent as last August, you have managers saying, look, referees need to get better, but some form of VAR is not the answer. It's hard to discuss really video refereeing in the Irish League at the minute because we don't know what it is. It's clear we're not going to have, red lines and all that type of stuff going on live at every moment of the game. But, we use this word and this descriptor VAR light, which the Welsh League does have. But it goes back to what Gerald Lawlor's talking about here. He's looking for some sort of new view, some sort of fresh structure for refs. Well, there needs to be a fresh structure because what does this new post-Mike Riley era look like? Proper investment, well, that's money. Technology, new technology, that's got to be money. So is this an Irish League thing? Is this the IFA who look after refereeing on this occasion? It's going to take someone to take a bold step and say, this is the way it's going to go. But if there isn't serious push from actual clubs and managers, are we in a weird dead duck? Is between NIFL and the Irish FA, are they going to go, we're going to bring in some form of replays and, reviews?
Yeah.
If the clubs say not a fan and don't want to spend the money on it, because who could
spend the money. Well, that's another
well,
thing.
who could be paid. Well, here's a question: would fans pay £17 into a game every week if it meant the refereeing was quote unquote better?
That's exactly my point. That's exactly.
I don't think they would.
Because if you said to people you're paying more money, the first thing they'd say, well, hang on, it's got to get better. And then there would be one decision at some stage which wouldn't go their way. And then it would be, well, I'm paying £17 for this, and I'm paying extra money for better standards, and it's not happening. They wouldn't. I mean, you can stick a wee poll up if you want, but I don't think that would be anybody's cup of tea. As I say, I think the point you make there about Mike Riley's a really good one. I think that actually went under the radar a little bit. And it was a bit of a fanfare appointment when he came in, head of, previously a hugely respected within the profession, not particularly amongst the fans, but in his job in England, and came in here with a remit to change up the refereeing standards, etc., make it a bit more professional outlook anyway, even if it wasn't so high as England. But when he left, it sort of just got swept under the carpet a little bit, and I think that sort of thing, it obviously hadn't worked for whatever reason. It hadn't worked, and as you say, he was a bit of a proponent for bringing in technology, and maybe that was what it was. He was looking to bring it in a little bit quicker than the league wanted. But certainly, given the comments we've had from Mr. Howler this weekend, it looks as if, as we said, it's on its way. But I do think something like that has to happen. There needs to be sort of somebody, again, to take the flak. Maybe Howard Webb gets it in England. He just sits as the sort of fourth official, if you want, for refereeing overall. He takes all the flak and is able to sort of bant it back a wee bit. So even if it's somebody like that, who, for example, rather than Declan Hassan having to come out after the game, can come out after the game and turn down the steam on it a little bit by sort of doing what Gerald Lawlor sort of said there, it's a mistake. But if there's a head of referees is there and says, look, we accept it was a mistake, this is why it happened, we will learn and all that sort of stuff, it might take the heat out of the situation at the time, because at the minute, it just goes on to the referee. everybody piles. If he does a game next week, he'll be remembered for that. And the next time he does a Linfield game, or sorry, a Portadown game rather than Linfield, Linfield probably cheering him on there. But the next time he does a Portadown game, they'll be all over him, and just a bit. I think we need to take the heat out of it a little
Yes.
bit, and whether or not somebody in there could just maybe do that, whether it was a head of referees or something, maybe I don't know, but who in their right mind would apply for that?
Well, you've also nailed it on the head there, because it's not like we have referees coming out of our ears. I know it's at a lower level, and how many people are really, shedding a tear for this. But you can even see recently, Coke was playing a game in the Bob Radcliffe Cup against Dungannon's under 20s. Game doesn't happen due to a late refereeing issue. Like that's a small creep. I doubt that will ever happen in top flight football here in this country, but there is not a pool that is so massive of quality that they are able to just, push people to the side and go, you need to be at this standard. And, people have to be allowed to make mistakes, and they will continue to make mistakes. I'll make mistakes, but, you know, clearly refereeing is a problem which is bubbling underneath and comes to the fore in big moments like this and the Lombardo red card and others that will no doubt happen throughout the season. But what's interesting is that when I'm retweeting what Jared's saying, when I'm saying, this is one of the more remarkable refereeing decisions I've seen live in a stadium, people already know where that conversation is going to go. On Twitter here, Garth saying VAR non-starter, goal line technology possibly, but still unlikely. Jem thinks we can't afford it. Samuel says the VAR would ruin the Irish League. He thinks we should spend money training the officials, or perhaps making them professional. I mean, maybe, but that how much money does it take to get there? Ivers probably on the other side of it saying goal line technology, absolutely, get it in immediately. It's not subjective, and he's right there. But when he gets to the other side of things, like, is there a way where the referees would be able to then go, right, red card, penalty decision, if the fourth official or maybe an extra official, again, that's cause, is there reviewing it, can go, right, check it. And of course, then we're going to get in a conversation of why didn't they check that corner, So
Yeah.
there's certain things, but
Well, that's it. I was just actually thinking about it when we'd had a chat previously about coming on, and that to me is exactly where VAR should work. I don't like this all the whole having to be. I know a lot of people say you've got to tell people what's happening. I'd much prefer that there was a guy just sitting up on the top, and I'll give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Can't remember I think it was 2006 World Cup final, the Zidane Materazzi. Yeah. Now there was nothing. There was no VAR. There was nothing. But the referee didn't see that. He did not see. Neither did the linesman. None of the officials saw the actual headbutt on Materazzi. Somebody up in the gods saw it, contacted the referee, whatever it meant, and told him that he'd headbutted him. So he sent him off. To me, that's how VAR should work. You shouldn't need to have like 10 minutes. If there's something that is absolutely clear and obvious, like Saturday, it was clear and obvious. So if you were able just to have an official up in the stand or whatever, they're all mic'd up, the referees are all mic'd up, and he's able to look at a monitor and see Declan, that definitely didn't go in the net. Absolutely not, 100%, and gives a code word or whatever it may be to say that did not happen. Then the referee can revisit it, however they do it. But the fans don't need to be involved. You don't need to stop the game for 5 minutes and look at ref. You've just got to accept it on a clear and absolute obvious thing. Now the problem comes in, as I say, what is a clear and obvious for one person isn't for another, and you become objective. But what I'm talking about there is that incident on Saturday could have been stopped because of if something like that was in place, and the fans wouldn't have known any different to who's done it. Was it the referee didn't give it? Was it the linesman didn't give it? It would have been just the officials as a whole did not give that, and we wouldn't have known any different. And so that to me is the way VAR should work. It shouldn't be sort of a 3-4 minute conversation looking at screens and all that sort of stuff. Just have the guy up on this, and if it's clear and obvious, he gets involved.
it's funny because as much as the Lombardo red card, to the yellows technically wasn't it, gets a bit of the spotlight here, I wonder if the referee looked back at that again Are they actually going to make it? I doubt that would actually be reviewed. But what's he reviewing? Was it a push? Was it whatever? There could have been something said, and it's dissent or whatever. So
Yeah.
in that occasion, but then every time there's a penalty, is there going to be a big hoo-ha review? And then there's times that the referee shouldn't review. It's not going to be perfect, and there's going to be human judgment along the line somewhere. And that's
Well,
even
there's the point.
if it does
There's
happen.
the point. Sorry. There's the point. That's exactly the point that I make as to why football will never work, and every other sport it does work, because when it comes in other sports, again, go back to my sport, it is accepted that this is not going to be 100% perfect. It has been accepted, and we move on with it. In football, you can see it right the way through. We have to have every single decision has to be 100% correct in your opinion. And another person's opinion could be completely different. So you are never going to get 100% accuracy. It's never going to be that way. So we have to, as football fans, accept a little bit of leeway. I mean, the VAR system in England has definitely got more decisions right than there were previously. But because there are still howlers, they want rid of it. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. How many times you watched the game? There was one the other week. Grimsby and Man United was on the other week with no VAR. Guy handles it into the net for Grimsby, and the first thing the commentator says, "If we had VAR, that would be chalked off." so so you don't want it, you don't want it, you don't want it. We don't have it. Oh, we need that back. So I mean, it's completely unworkable, I think, in football just because of the system that we have.
It's the constant delay of games I feel like people get frustrated with in top flight
Definitely.
English football, and as well as that, almost like a situation where everything is play until I know everything's play until the whistle, but there's so many situations where play the game, and then they'll find an offside somewhere, or it's there's some tackle a minute ago beforehand. Look, video refereeing of some kind is not perfect. So we might know, I don't care that if you hate me talk about other sports, I am an American football fan, I'm a New Orleans Saints fan, and for those who know, they know that is a team who had some really big, epically massive moments that even stopped them getting to a Super Bowl, which was outrageous, but it wasn't reviewed because it was a case of, incidents like this, pass interference, wasn't reviewed. On Sunday night, I watched the Saints play against the Arizona Cardinals. It didn't really matter in the game. It was a catch, and then it was ruled as not a catch, and everyone's going, what a ridiculous. How can they not do that? So it'll continue, it'll happen, but what will be interesting is, how do we get to the next phase? What is the next phase? And who will pay for it? Because the Welsh football here, Welsh Football League have brought it in now, and this all comes from about £750,000 worth of investment from, the Welsh FA, and that wasn't all on some sort of VAR. We've seen some sort of VAR in Europe for the games Linfield played. So this is not the first, and it will 100% not be the last, but up there with summer football, Sunday football, going professional, all island competitions, stick video refereeing on the top of that, because it's going to come back and back and back. And I think, and I know there's so many other previous examples, like McGonagall against Linfield a couple of years ago, but I think this is going to be the goal that's referenced, even though overall in the impact of the game, I think it had none. To summarise the game and move on, Portdown do well for the first half to kind of do a bit of a carrot, let's say, from what I've seen this season. Keep strong, compact, try and get on the counter. Probably don't really have the quality of players to break through at speed, but they had their chances, and Linfield, as much as they huff and puff, couldn't break them down. Sneaked through and get a goal early in the second half. Everybody write down the name Samuel Taylor. Linfield may have found their left back, 20 years old, Loney from Tranmere. The fella can pass, he can move, he is a positive player. He really can cut a defence in half, finds that bit of space high on the left-hand side. He is not a polished product, but the fact he's up there and got the goal says it all. And when you see him live, you'll think, who is that wee fella? And I was quite impressed with him at left back. And I think that's why your Carrick has a certain player on loan from Linfield. So, look, 3-0 Linfield, very good. Offord and Fitzpatrick. The one thing I would say is that unless those two are clicking, I wonder how they're going to break down teams, because it's a nice ball from Brown to find Taylor at the back post. But without that, I could have seen that going on and on and on, where they're just trying to break down. At times, Portadown had 10 or 11 men behind the ball. Portadown, that's one of the toughest games you'll face up against. So it's been an up and down season. 2 wins out of 6. But you've had Glentoran at home, Larne away, Linfield away. You've got Coleraine at home next week. Those games are going to come. You've got a couple of games now where you can maybe get more points, and you look down the bottom of the table. You're feeling okay. You're not ecstatic, but you're not down in the dumps with how you are facing.
They've picked up a couple of wins there against the teams in the bottom 6 at the minute. Whether they stay there or not, I don't know. But those are the 2 games they won. I wouldn't be too disconcerted about Portadown just right now, and certainly not on Saturday. They'll park that one. If they got a point or nicked one to win the game, they'd have been ecstatic. But I don't think they'll worry too much about that. And yeah, look, Linfield. Sam Taylor doing his very best Isaac Price impression, or whether it's the other way around. Maybe he was doing his Sam Taylor impression there on Monday night. But look, the 2 boys up front are going to work well, obviously. And the one thing that offers you, we've probably done that a few times, is he will shoot from outside the box. I think you've referenced that on the pod already this season. He will shoot from outside the box, and he's got a really good accuracy in terms of that. So he'll be the one you'll be looking to break a game like that. Fitzpatrick will be more in the box and referencing the ghost goal again. That's what he'd be more likely to do. I think, you talked about the 4 teams at the top that are starting to sort of form a little bit of a breakaway, maybe between them. They've conceded 4 goals between them, and I think that's something to really look at. Linfield haven't conceded a goal. Glenn's only 1. Wonder who that was against. Coleraine just 1 and Larne just 2. Do you know what I mean? Over a period of 5-6 games each, bar Linfield's 3, but they haven't conceded a goal at all. So that to me is where they're gonna go with that. Being really solid at the back.
Is there anything that kind of separates those teams from the rest of the league? I wonder.
Just that for a start.
Oh, they're all full time.
Yeah, just at this, that for a start, they're going to be pretty solid at the back, but Coleraine obviously will probably get on to them going forward. Now Linfield have got the 2 boys up top and always breaking through, and I just think those 4 do have a bit more quality in the rest of the league. I mean, I watched Cliftonville on Saturday game, which we'll get on to, but they do look as if they may well, as you referenced at the top of the episode, they may start to pull away as we get towards sort of halfway.
Coleraine looked ferocious on Saturday. I know this Crusaders team is shipping goals like it's going out of fashion, but that was the side which I thought they could be, and looks as though they are on Saturday. Fast, confident, and just have that bit of magic on the ball.
They were absolutely outstanding on Saturday, and they haven't really hit the heights so far this season. They've been sort of methodical and getting a goal from the usual sort of suspects and getting over the line. But on Saturday, they were the business on Saturday. And if that's what we're going to see from Coleraine the rest of the season, then the investment will be well worth every penny, because they tore Crusaders apart on Saturday. I mean, Johnny Tuffy, 4-0 defeat, and he was man of the match. I think he was outstanding. Must have saved half a dozen on top of that. So, Coleraine were just brilliant. And even, I actually was talking about the managers after the game making excuses or whatever, but for once, Declan Cadell just off the cap and said, look, we're not going to play a team like that every week. And they were just far too good for us. And, for a guy to own up to that on a home ground, they were. Simple as that. Anybody watching the game, I think Crusaders maybe 1 shot in the whole of the game, and Coleraine just bossed the game, as you say, speed with a little bit of quality as well. And I think somebody that's maybe going to go under the radar with all the signings, I think Jamie Glacken might just come into his own with this team, because he's always been a little bit of a maverick player for them. And in years gone by, they maybe needed him to do a little bit more of a shift. I think now he's got enough players of quality around him that he can sort of do that little bit of magic and sort of do something to create for Cooper or Shevlin or McManus or whatever. He just
Plus,
looked to be the man.
you can't double up on Shevlin,
Exactly.
Cooper, McManus, and Glacken. You know,
Exactly.
so actually sometimes those extra players can give you more space rather than gobble up your time on the ball. And I think he showed a bit of that last season. It must be said, and him actually being more central probably plays into his abilities a lot more. So Coring keep gliding through really nicely. Let's not get too hasty here, but Crusaders.
Yeah.
13 goals conceded in 5 games. At home, they look almost helpless. Um, like, it's early doors. This team is kind of brought together and duct tape over the summer there. They've got a little bonding, got a few kind of welcome to the Irish League moments here. And they do have bright sparks going, but so far they've got one win. That was against Bangor away from home. And by all accounts, that could have went very differently if those penalties had went in.
Yeah, very much so. That game could have gone either way. In fact, Bangor probably think themselves a wee bit unlucky that night. And if you think about that, you'd be looking at even 1 point out of that game instead of the three. You know, again, I go back to the reference of the first game of the season. For half an hour, they looked $1 million in the first game of the season. I know it's the first game of the season and everything gets magnified in the first game. But for half an hour, they sort of ran about sharp, looked as if they were really buzzing. And then again, we go back to VAR. That penalty decision, Declan Cattell was really disappointed. I thought it was a penalty that day, actually the first one, that got carried back into the game. But then it was that lack of experience maybe in the Crusaders team that just didn't help them, and Carrick the complete opposite, started to get a bit of a momentum going. And what we've seen since sort of has shown that Carrick aren't the worst side in the world, and they can pick up goals, and just getting the win in the last minute obviously made a huge difference. But going forward now for Crusaders, you pick up 3 points at the start of the season for an inexperienced side. It might get a bit of momentum going, but at the minute, I mean, that was a bit of a steamroller job on Saturday, and it's not losing the game. It's the confidence that you move forward with a young group. I think it could be a bit of a worry, and not just a young group of players, still a young manager, even though he's had a year.
You get to that point we were talking about earlier, kind of 10 games, and it can really set you up positively or negatively moving forward. We saw Crusaders going on a run last year, but they have a game against the Swifts next away from home. I know this isn't the same Swifts team that we saw last year. They then go to Inver Park. They then take on Ballymena at home, and then they go away to Glenavon. So in the mix there, some tough, but also some games where they need to win.
Yeah, they
They need
do.
to get results here. You know, they go to Portadown, who's going to be a rival this year, lose, and that game against Carrick looked like it's going to be key. It's a really bad tone setter for them. So we see what they can do in spurts, but they got a spanking up on Saturday. Continuing on with those teams near the top of the league, Glentoran yet to lose, and they get their goals early against Ballymena, who look like they've got this rugged toughness to them, but perhaps just don't have the attacking talent to get across the line against the absolute tippy-toppy teams in the league.
Yeah, that would be a fair summation there. They've done really well, Ballymena, and again, a reference to teams that haven't conceded. They haven't conceded really at all this season until last week or whatever. But if you're watching just the game on Saturday, the first 20 minutes of that game on Saturday, I think you'd be thinking, how many goals have this team conceded? Because the two goals they conceded were pretty straightforward. The first one, I mean, I think the guys on the radio said it. You've got a guy, 6 foot plus. This is his MO. He stands in the box and heads balls into the net. And you got a cross coming in and you leave him almost untouched, 6 yards out. He's not going to miss. And he would have been delighted to get off the mark with that. And then they give the ball away just outside their own box, and Jenkins punishes them, and it's 2-0 in the first 20 minutes. And it could have been a few more by all accounts. And, the game was pretty much up. Ballymena huffed and puffed a wee bit, but Glentoran, as we've referenced at the back, are pretty sturdy at the minute, and they've got a settled unit. And Ballymena never really looked like breaking it down at all. It was maybe a little bit of luck or something that would have came set piece, but the Glens just pretty coasted that one and eased a 2-0 win. And And that would have been probably pre-game. You were probably previewing it last week. It might have been a tough one, and this will be a marker for the Glens if they go to Ballymena and come away with a win. But it actually looked like a pretty comfortable win and job done and move on.
They haven't had to have world beaters against them. Like they have their first game against Linfield coming up. They haven't gone against Coleraine, and Lauren is on the horizon. So will they be caught in the middle between the teams below them and that pack? Perhaps. But they are what I think they could have been. And that is they grab their goals, they're solid at the back, and they just they do what you're supposed to do in football.
Yeah,
Win.
that's exactly it. They haven't done that enough. Haven't done that enough over the years. Been just solid at the back, get their goals early and see a game out. Yeah.
And they've got experience in there at the back, and we haven't seen much of Hubin this season, but he did what I think he is going to come in and do, and just kind of get goals out of nowhere. And I think he's going to score goals like that in the last minute. He's going to score when they're maybe a goal down. It just all of a sudden flip games. But that that's why you pay the money. That's why you get a player with his experience and particularly his stature. There was plenty of experience floating in around that box, and between just switching off, not being able to physically outmuscle him, he stood his ground and knocked it in. And you'd be tearing your hair out there if you're a Ballymena fan. You go back to back now from you lose to Glentoran, you lose at Larne, despite having missed the penalty there. It's 2-0, but it's kind of a final goal which doubles their lead. They'll feel as though they've had a chance to do better than they have. But if you're Ballymena, you got to feel pretty happy that they're sitting there. 3 wins to start off it. You lose against maybe this new top 4. Someone is going to have to be the 5th best team in this league. I'm not I'm not saying that we're already crowning Linfield, Larne, Coleraine and Glentoran. But that's still a good place to be.
Oh,
So
definitely for Ballymena.
they look
Given
like the
where they've
front
been.
runners for it at the minute.
Yeah, given where they've been over the past couple of years, obviously it was I mean, I think probably a couple of years ago when I came on, Jim Irvin just taking the job, and he was having a rough time that first year. And I think I said, if he can get through this year without being relegated, where they were at. It'll really stand them in good stead for going forward. The experience of being in a real tough campaign, and I think that was last year. They got off the flyer last year, were going well, and then hit that real breaks in the mid sort of period. This season, a bit of both really. They've gone off to a really, really good start, solid at the back, and but now they've played the couple of top teams, and they've come out unstuck. But look, I think they've got enough quality there. I think he's bought well. They've got some good players in there now, and they are pretty solid against the sort of teams in and around sort of the second 8 of the league. We've referenced it, and I think they'll be fine, and they could push. I mean, there'll be 1 or 2 teams we'll probably talk about here could push for 5th and 6th now, given that it might not be just as clear cut as it's been in previous years, the top 6.
And to wrap up this kind of opening impressive pack, Lauren just quietly doing their business here. It takes the second half to get their goal. In fact, it takes about 71st minute here to get their first goal against Bangor away. But they're not flashing. They're not dominating. Bar that blowout actually against Portadown. But hey, they get 2-0 against Bangor, and the only thing they'll be remembered for is that it's 3 points at the end of the season.
Well, probably Lauren will think, and probably the 2 players concerned will probably think it might be remembered for a little bit better, because Conor McCalmont does his best Arjen Robben. Everybody knows it's coming. It's coming. Left foot, but they still show him inside, and he curls one in off the post, and then Benjamin Key cracks one in at the death. So those are the things we're talking about. Bangor looked to be pretty stoic right the way through, and a couple of strikes outside the box gets Lauren the points, but you know. They have come under the radar a little bit from start of the season. There was a bit of turmoil at the start of the season. Has been well documented, but everyone just has come in here and he's just staying under the radar. And I think right now, first sort of 10 games, I think they'll be happy enough just to pick up wins and stay in the pack and then see where they can go from there. I think he's started to get more settled team and is happy to just tick along and let the likes of the Glens and Coleraine and maybe the Blues when they've caught up the game sort of take the limelight at the minute and stay under the radar, as I say. But 2-0 is a good win for them and back to back clean sheets as well.
They're blooding plenty of young players there, and Lusty McGee. I've talked about this with Connor, even there Simpson coming in, and McHenry's getting back into the side after suspension, but after a season where he is a spectator for a majority of it, he never really said, I'm one of the main men in this side. There's a chance for him to be a creative spark in it more and more. I know he had more time near the end of the season than as a squad that rotates, but I think he's a player that gets forgotten about in the real quality players that are in this league. And as you said, we know what he can do with his left foot coming in from the right-hand side. So do we expect to have a 2 and a 2 with Linfield, Coleraine, Larne, Glentoran? Maybe, but let's not knock out Larne, because the only reason they don't have a clean copybook in the league right now is due to a late goal against Coleraine. So
yeah, and look, I think changing.
And they'll have plenty of times to correct that.
We talked about the Glens maybe a little bit different and trying to be more consistent as well. I think Larne will change a little bit from where they've been over the last few years. It's been with the European campaign last year, obviously they built up a pretty big squad to try and cope with the Thursday, Sunday. I think they might already be going back to let's get a really settled 1 to 11 here, whatever it may be number ways, but settled lineup. So we almost pick our team week in, week out now, and we'll dip in and out of the League Cup and the County Antrim Shield. But our league structure will be the same 11, barring injuries. Let's stick to a settled team here and try and build a bit of momentum with that team, rather than having to chop and change quite a lot. And they were very successful with that when they first sort of got back up into the league. And I think they might go back to that again, especially with the manager now, Gary Haven, for as long as he's there. But I think he might be there for a while now.
Yeah, it's hard to really. It's been a few games where they've played against teams that they're probably expected to win. They've won, so got a job done there. But continue momentum. Maybe any kind of push for Gary Haven could be the right choice. He's been about there for a while and putting his ideas in this team. Could see further success. But we talk about this big four at the top of the league. At least I'm the one that's projecting that. Maybe Cliftonville are saying, yeah, we haven't started super brilliantly. There's a whole lot of noise off the pitch, which isn't really fun. But here's Magilton and Little. They've got 3 more years under the contract. That'll please them. And they go against one of the league's in-form sides, unbeaten up until Saturday, and they win away from home. So maybe this talk of Ballymena being favourites for 5th, or perhaps they'll have bigger ambitions than that, is unfounded.
Look, I've sort of said about when we were talking about Ballymena there that I do think, again, if we're accepting that those 4 teams above are a little bit of a higher quality, no guarantees, of course, but 5th and 6th now, is up for grabs for me. When Cliftonville were coming on Saturday to Taylor's Avenue, I sort of looked at the team sheet about 2 o'clock and I thought a few years back Cliftonville would be coming here and I'd be saying they'd be bang favourites here. We'll be doing well to get something out of this game. On Saturday, I just looked at the 2 teams, not really looking at sort of form going into just looked at the 2 team sheets and I went, not too much between these teams at the minute. And, this could be a really tight game today. And look, I would say, watching the game, obviously, I watched the game quite closely. Cliftonville played the better football. Definitely, they were. I mean, well done.
As close as you can from 5 stories up.
Yeah, I am quite. But I had a great view up there now, to be fair.
I joke it's probably as high as I was at Windsor, and I'm able to see inches.
But Rory Hale, as usual, a little bit of a class above everything else on the pitch. Really, he's the one that really is able to put his foot in the ball. He gets the opening goal. A little bit fortunate that it fell to him, but he put it away as he normally does. A second goal, header from a 6-yard box, one of the old ones, and I think Joe Crow just slipped a wee bit and lost his man. And those were the 2 goals. And look, they had a few other chances, Cliftonville, but it didn't dominate the game as in chances and sort of the way the old Cliftonville teams up front would have maybe gone gong ho and sort of ran at you and done that sort of thing. And sort of shot after shot after shot. I didn't really feel that they were, as I said, they were the better side in terms of knocking the ball about and things. Carrick did not play well. That's, as I said earlier, that's the worst performance of the season for me. But Carrick missed a penalty with about 5 minutes to go, and Nedis Maculetus missed an absolute sitter. It was a lovely move, step over from Heatley, and he was 5, 6 yards out and hit the keeper with it. That hit the bar then. So he should have definitely scored that, and then Clintonville actually got their second goal just after that. So Carrick didn't play well, but theoretically could have got a point out of it, and it probably wouldn't have been justified in terms of the football that was played was definitely better from Cliftonville. But I wasn't massively impressed by Cliftonville, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be saying that that's the team that's going to be fifth this year for sure. They may well end up there, but just their forward line at the minute needs a little bit of tweaking for me. Some nice players, but just needs a wee bit of tweaking for me.
I don't think anybody's really terrified of the Cliftonville front line or front two, whoever it's going to be, until we see something else. Gormley doesn't seem to be consistently starting and playing long periods of games, but that's not really expected. Outside of him, no one's grabbed their place and said, "Hey, I'm a quality Irish League starter. Here we go." But there's a flood of new names there, all fighting for a place. Plenty of them with youth on their side, but with youth also kind of comes inexperience, and it's a team that's all kind of in flux at the minute. They all seem to have qualities, but I would almost argue that Carrick are the complete opposite to them. It's a team bursting with experience who are very savvy, know their role, and are very focused on the task at hand, which is either defending for their lives or just trying to break away and use as much gas as possible. You looked like a team a couple of weeks ago there after the win against Dungannon. I was saying lots of great things. I said that this is a team that looks very physical, well put together, and you'll be difficult to beat. And despite losing out here your first time this season, you could see how this could have been a very different result on your day. And in fact, even that first goal, very un-Carrick-esque in the way they were set up. You haven't really got caught. Now, teams will want to catch you on the counter like that. You're not a team, especially at the back, which is blessed with agility. However, I haven't seen a back line from Carrick that high up the pitch this season.
Yeah, it was one of those to pull an NFL sort of adage. It was a turnover, and we'd sort of picked up a turnover, and Joe Crow probably he's been outstanding this season.
He has been brilliant.
I'm going to dig him out here, but he's been absolutely outstanding. I watched the game on Tuesday night. Okay, again, it was a few changes from Bangor, but he absolutely ran the show on Tuesday. He was everywhere. He was brilliant. Just on Saturday, he lost the ball in a 50-50 challenge, and 9 times out of 10 he would have recovered and got a little toe in, but it broke, and I think that's why the defenders were a little bit higher than they were. And then I think Jimmy Collier tried to clear one, and it sort of bounced towards heel then. And as I said, another day it doesn't drop the heel. Another day he puts it wide or whatever. But yeah, you're right. That's a very un-Carrick one. I think the manager referenced that afterwards. He sort of said it's not like us to concede. And in fact, similarly, the second goal now.
Yeah,
we would have conceded lots of goals like that. Previously, you've known my issues with the goalkeeper previously wouldn't come off his line. That for me, I said to you before, that's the main difference for me this year is we've got a goalkeeper who just commands. He's a terrific goalkeeper for me. Going forward, I think he's going to be a really good signing.
I think you've been proven massively right with the goalkeeper shout. I really do.
I think he's great. I think I watched him on Saturday as well. Not just what he commanded in his box and things like that, but just his communication to his back four, who are certainly his two centre halves are fairly well experienced, as you've referenced. But I think just talking about the back four, I know a lot of people looked at, signing Gallagher, signing Billy Joe Burns, who isn't playing at the minute, but played on Tuesday and was excellent. And things like that. Luke McCulloch's in his 30s as well. But Baxter's MO here looks like, let's play these two guys in the middle of the park. Let's have our know-how. Don't forget, Stuart King brought in Jim Irvin as well, the Carrick as well, and it worked really well. Get two guys in the centre half position who know exactly what they're doing, and then have the youth around them. So he's got McKay. You've said him. McKay's come in from Linfield. We've got Jack Scott in at the other side. He's got Ben Buchanan Ralston if he wants to use him, a young kid. And then the midfield, we've got a little bit of experience in again. But then you've got McAlitis, Wade, Aidan Steele's been a fantastic pickup from Ards. Really, really good.
Every single team should be kicking themselves they didn't get Steele. He's
Yeah,
shown at times for odds, even in the cup competitions as well. The man can pass and move. What a nimble little midfield player he is.
excellent player. He's been for us so far. He dovetails really well with Joe Crow. Sean Clucas is injured at the minute. Ethan Boyle's injured at the minute. So there's a bit of a squad there, and I look down the squad on the bench on Saturday, and definitely there's options there. Calcherry's not getting in the team either. He's been a very good player for Carrick for many years now. So look, there's plenty of experience there, as you've said, but there's plenty of youth as well, legs around them, and they definitely can go on the break. The goal they scored, if you've seen it, was on the last sort of minutes. Danny Gibson breaks down the left, but a sort of 38-year-old is able to lay the ball off and then get in the box. He literally is not 38. If he was something else, you'd be thinking this guy's 19 still. He is unbelievable. His energy is that was the 91st minute the game gets on the end of it.
Yeah, he looks to have, having a good season so far. And Gibson, I know it took a while for him to get going last season, but I think every single team and fan base that I've talked to post seeing character like that fella Donny Gibson, because the man can run, push, challenge. It's good to see him back at his best.
Yeah, first season he was outstanding. I think first time we spoke, I was referencing this guy's having a really top season here. He could finish. He was quick. And he was just bang on it. And then sort of last season lost his way, as you've mentioned a wee bit. I think there was a few issues off the field as well that weren't helping him. And he lost his way a wee bit in terms of position as well. He was either playing centre forward, moved out to the wing. He's been playing wing at the minute with Lecky. Obviously, that's the major downside from Saturday. I think Adam Lecky's picked up a hamstring injury in the first sort of 20, 25 minutes. And I know he was another one that a lot of people looked at and sort of sneered at a little bit. Why are you picking this guy up? He's been pivotal for us. He's guy up top, holds the ball up, lets the wingers do their thing. So he'll be a miss, don't get me wrong, but we're going to go back now and probably Danny Gibson to go back down the middle again now with either Maculitis or Ryan Wade coming in. But even saying that, two decent replacements. Maculitis was very good last year. So we've got replacements in places now, and I think the sort of doom and gloom previous pre-season rather. I wasn't one that thought we'd be in a lot of problems, and I think we could be okay this year. I think
And you were very vocal about that at the live show
yeah,
at the start of the season. You
yeah,
said, no, 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 no. I think I had you guys as 11th. Joe had you as 12th. You said, you know what? I think people are discounting us.
yeah,
And, it's a great start to the season. You're fourth at the minute, 10 points on the board from five. I'm sure you will even admit it's likely that you will somewhat regress to the mean. But this is also a team who haven't played Portadown. You haven't played Bangor yet. So yes, you will have the Linfields coming for you, Coleraines coming for you, but there's still plenty of games where you could end this first run around the globe, let's just say around the league, looking pretty strong. And with safety, I think, based on last year being the first and foremost aim, 10 points on Glenavon, bottom, that's big. And even across what will be another 32 games, that is a lot to swing.
yeah. I mean, looking at our games we've won, we beat Glenavon at home, probably wasn't the prettiest, but we won that game 1-0, obviously beat the Cruise day one. Then the win against Dungannon, who obviously would have been a top six contender. Maybe you'd have been talking about pre-season, but now they're in the bottom. They've only won one game on Saturday. So that's another team down the bottom. And then we've got the other wins we've picked up against teams in and around us. So yes, we got Bangor on coming up on Saturday. And obviously we won that game in the County Antrim Shield. So if we can win that, and then obviously the Portadown game, and then a couple of free hits against the Blues and Coleraine if you can. But I definitely don't think we'll be a team that will capitulate too often. I think we'll give the big teams a bit of a shout. Um, and we've been pretty poor in the cups recently, so maybe this season we could get a bit of a cup run. Obviously we're into the next round of County Antrim Shield, if you want to count that as a cup these days. But yeah, League Cup then maybe in the Irish Cup maybe we'll maybe look at those and try and get a bit of a run. I'm sure there's a certain Stephen Baxter had a decent record at Crusaders, so maybe he'll target that.
Indeed, and I think it's a nice, if you're a fan of Stephen Baxter, you will be patting yourself on the back saying, you know what, man still got it. He had a summer to put together a squad. Everyone poo-pooed the old boys, but he's shown that he can put together a side that can get points. Might not be some sort of tiki-taka, whatever, wonderful masterpiece of modern football, but it is effective, and I think it should be respected throughout the league because how many times have we talked about managers near the bottom of the league trying to play football the right way,
Yeah,
and it ends in the end with a P45,
absolutely.
or a team struggling at the end of the season. So wins are wins, and you know what? I still think there's excitement to have at the top end of the pitch as well. And like I said, love Steele, Crow. Fortunes could change, but you've put yourself in a great position moving forward. And finally, a game I thought could have been second on the list, but I just got distracted by other things here. Glenavon, we mentioned them, bottom of the table, and they've played 6 games, and they go up against Dungannon Swifts at home, importantly, who also had not won a game going into this. But when it rains, it pours. In Lurgan, they lose centre back who they brought in, McCalmont, after 6 minutes. And then before there's 30 minutes on the clock, Harry Murphy's seeing red for 2 yellows. Before the end of the day, their captain, Barney McCune, is also sent off. So next game, who's playing at the back, we don't know. But in short, at home, they lose a crunch game.
It was a close game, yeah. And I'm not sure if you'd have got sort of one of those magic 8 balls and sort of scripted a game, if it could have gone any worse for Glenavon in a what it turned out to be a big game. Again, pre-season, you probably looked at Glenavon, Dungannon, mid-table, sort of this will sort of see who's going to be in that 6th, 7th sort of position. But at the time of playing on Saturday, it was 11v12, not a point on the board. And goals, very, very few between the two of them. And it was a relegation, early season relegation game. So a big game if you can get up and running. And it could not have gone any worse for Glenavon. As you mentioned, losing McClellan straight away, who's been a big signing for them, and he's out now. And then I thought Harry Murphy was a little bit unlucky. It probably was a second yellow because of the situation.
That early, that's frustrating.
Yeah,
isn't it?
where he was in the pitch, he's been sort of a little bit unlucky to lose the ball through his legs and whatnot, and then he can't really go anywhere. But look, it's not one of those ones we've been talking about earlier where you would say, that's a shocker. The referee's probably left with no choice to give another yellow, but I thought it was a little bit unlucky. It's not as if he's grabbed hold of him or anything like that. The second one, I mean, the manager must be literally turning what little Harry's got out, because, I mean, yeah, you're under the pump, you're 1-0 down. In fact, you're 2-0 down, and you're down to 10 men, and okay, the referee that's given the decision, and you're not happy with it, but to follow it up with a little bit of a sarcastic sort of clap, you're asking for trouble. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. You've asked for it. And Jamie Robinson's given him a second yellow within 30 seconds, and he's gone for an early one. So down to 9. Could have got worse even. I'm saying it couldn't have got any worse. It could have done, because Dungannon could have gone and got a couple more, and then we'd been in real.
And goal difference,
yeah,
potentially 2 teams at the bottom,
no problems. So, I mean, it couldn't have gotten, as I said, it was a real poor day for Glenavon, given the nature of the game. It was a big game. And they're sitting no points from 6 games, and where do you go from here? I think you'd probably tell me here now. They got Lauren at the weekend. Is it Lauren at the weekend?
Well, that's the thing. If you're Glenavon and you're without potentially 3 of your starting centre backs or players you'd want to play there, including your captain, do you want a Lauren, or do you want a game that might be vital, against a Bangor?
Well, the way you're looking at now, down the bottom, you probably said that game on Saturday would have been the one game you were looking at. Now, maybe take a free hit and just sort of say, we're going to lose the 7th game here because we've got 3 or 4 players out. Maybe, but just momentum-wise, it's not going to look good if you lose again.
We predicted this early, just on the way things have went, but they have Lauren next. Then they go to Windsor Park. And then before the end of the month, they have that game which we highlighted earlier, at home against the Crews. You almost have to say these next 2 games are out, so they're likely to be 8 losses, maybe one draw. Let's say one of them comes through, but they are potentially staring down the barrel of 8 losses in a row. Nothing you can do about now about those games previously. Is Paddy McLaughlin under pressure?
He'll be
He's
under,
obviously under pressure as a result, but like I mean, he's under pressure to get results. But you know what I'm saying here? Like,
absolutely, yeah. And
are there itchy feet in Lurgan based on this start to the season?
since Gary Hamilton's left, it hasn't been really a period where somebody's been not been under pressure in the job since Gary Hamilton's left, and even in his last sort of 12 months, the tenure was pretty precarious. He was sort of said to be on his last legs a lot of times and managed to stay there for a while. But once he's gone, there hasn't been anybody that's really sort of not been under pressure until they appointed Paddy McLaughlin. If you remember that when he was appointed, he was in running for the Carrick job with Stephen Baxter. We always thought that Baxter was going to get it, but I remember Paddy McLaughlin was at the game just after Stuart King had lost his job. So that again was a little bit of a sliding doors moment. Carrick went with the tried and tested, and for the rest of the season, Carrick got a lot of draws and didn't really turn wins from those draws, and then got into a period where they fell down into 11th. And I know a lot of people were talking about we should have got that guy McLaughlin. He'd have been more proactive, and would have taken. And it just how it changes now. You're looking at a guy who's lost 6 games in a row now. Carrick are sitting in what, fourth position, fairly solid with Baxter, and sort of that narrative has turned a little bit. But under pressure, probably given the nature and the status of the man you're talking about, Paddy McLaughlin, that Glenavon were cock a hoop to get him at the time. There was a lot of how did we get this guy? That he's status in the league. We've got him, and we're going to stick with him. So I think he's got a little bit of money in the bank, but how long does that continue? Because if you're sitting in the boardroom at Glenavon, and we're staring down the barrel, no club can face relegation now, really in terms of finance. So at what stage they look at it, I mean, they're not going to pull the plug off the next 2 games for sure, because they're
No.
a couple of free hits here, but certainly halfway through the season, if they're not getting some points on the board, I do feel they've been a little bit unlucky with injuries
Yes,
and
I
red
agree.
cards and things like that. And it could turn on a in off somebody's backside or whatever and grab a goal. But
Even,
it's not looking good at the minute.
yeah, even game to game, if they get a draw against Korean, for example, something like that, it's all just a bit like they were a team that had plenty of movement, plenty of changes during the summer. That takes time to bed in. It's the nature of the league right now, because they are one of the teams at the bottom. There's only like they haven't got to play against Portadown, they haven't got to play against Bangor, so those are the teams that you're likely to get results against. Yes, they're unlucky against Cliftonville, and they lose. It just shows you how points early are vital, because that game against Ballymena maybe feels more winnable now, but they still lose it early on in the season, first game. The Carrick result as well. Like they are only 6 points off Portadown and Bangor, 3 points behind Crusaders and Dungannon, who won their first game of the season. It's just because they've got 2 games. It's likely to be 8 losses in a row, and if they were to change right now, if how is that going to change anything? Because you're still here in September, and you've got all the players who Paddy pretty much and his team brought in. So what does an Oran Kearney change? What does maybe a new kind of new age coach like Tommy Stewart bring to that job? For example, Dean Smith, whatever. Does it change anything? Does it need to change anything now? Probably not. But you must say, once we get the 12 game marker, 11 games, you know, that's where you could see where how can you let it sit on it. And we obviously don't know what's going on behind the scenes, so
Yeah,
it's just interesting that we are seeing this for the 3rd season in a row.
yeah,
Hamilton goes kind of late autumn, doesn't he? Kind of think maybe around November, December. I'm pretty sure then we see Paddy come in last season around maybe
it was. Yeah, it
November-ish.
was the same time as I say around Baxter when McDonald was shown the door. So yeah, it's the same thing again. But as I say, this time I think you're asking what does it bring if you change now? I would say it would bring instability is what it would bring, and they would have to start again. So I don't think I think the fact that they're not a million miles off, despite the fact they've lost 6 games here, they're not a million miles off here, and a couple of wins. Yes, let's say let's say we go 7-8 here. It'll be those 2 or 3 games. If you were to win two of those last 3 or 4 games before the first sort of part of the season, the first 11, 12 games, suddenly you're up in the mix again. It's just, I think it is once you sort of look as if you're cut adrift a wee bit like Loughgall were last year. They look like, the optics on it where that they're cut adrift a wee bit here. They're going to have to win 2 or 3 games even to get up to 11th. If it gets to that stage, then maybe there's a conversation to be had. But right now, I think you just let the guy do his job and try and turn this thing around.
It's stupidly early. I know this, and they could be sitting here at 7th come the end of the season, right? But if you're a Glenavon fan, do you think you'd shake my hand for 11th?
Oh, what a shake that is. Uh, no, I don't. I don't.
I think you're right.
I think they wouldn't. I think they still think that they've got enough on board. I think they were pretty bullish early pre-season. A lot of the chat was them pushing. We were in the same boat last year at Carrick Rangers. We lost our first 8, I think. And obviously the defeat at Queens home to Queens cost Stuart his job. But the league campaign was going pear-shaped. And I'm sort of contradicting myself a wee bit. Carrick changed and obviously got Stephen Baxter and changed it around pretty quickly. But I think Paddy McLaughlin has enough know-how here to get something from his team. It's not as if we're sort of talking every week that they're getting battered every week here, and everything's gone wrong. Yes, they're not scoring goals, and they're not sort of keeping them out, which is not a great recipe. But it doesn't look like they're sort of cut adrift here, and they don't know what they're doing. I think the guy's got enough about him, and his staff will maybe just take a little bit of reset here, and if they can get out of these 2 games, maybe pick up a point or two against these 2 tough games. Well, like we've just referenced it, maybe the tough games are exactly what they want now.
Mm.
Get in there and have a wee bit of siege mentality and try and shore it up for these next couple of games, and then pick off. It'll obviously board it down. It'll be a big game and the cruise.
It's hard to really say too much about Dungannon here because they've been poor this year, losing all around them, and then they beat a team who eventually end with 9 men and play with 10 for a majority of it. They take the chances, which is important, and we all know what Rodney did last year. You're starting to wonder, is this manager of the season beginning to be
Poison chalice.
a poison chalice indeed? Dean Smith last year, now Roddy Macari this year. I still think he's got a squad which should be able to push on from down near the bottom, but
Yeah, I was quite surprised actually at Macari this year. He's been quite vocal in his post match about how disappointed he's been, and usually you don't hear that, especially from him. And maybe it was just the higher echelons of getting the European campaign, and maybe the expectation was a little bit more. But he usually doesn't come across like that. He usually keeps everything fairly on a level, even keel. But he's been quite critical, certainly after the game against Carrick. He said it was one of the worst performances he'd seen. I didn't really see that. They weren't awful, but Carrick picked them off and sort of bullied them out of the game a wee bit. But he's been quite critical of the team, and obviously then getting the win on Saturday, that might turn it around a wee bit, because again they haven't changed a great deal from last year. So it's football, really, it can change in a heartbeat. So if they can pick up a few wins now, they might start looking back up the league again. But a big win for them on Saturday, a huge win. And yeah, Keelan Dillon hitting the mark with a lovely free kick. We have to mention that. Obviously, again referencing the Germany game, Florian Wirtz did it last night, but anything he can do, Keelan Dillon can do just as well.
Yeah, both goals actually kind of looked a wee bit like the Northern Ireland,
Yeah.
Northern Ireland goals there. The one scored by Price, and then the other one kind of the Verts one. But yeah, I think Dungannon have got a bit more to do here. I think they might struggle to see teams off this year until they try and find a bit more intensity up top. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The McGovern thing, I think it's obviously a factor, but it's not the number one factor. And I think the frustration from Macari, I think was him just individual mistakes and intensity. I think this league continues to step up bit by bit every year. And if you're not fully committed, big into these games, have that focus on how the manager prepares your team you will falter in moments. And I think Carrick, our team, as an example, it proves that if you really concentrate on structure and game planning, you can, and also highlighting your strengths, you will see success. Dungannon, or I feel as though are kind of like a team who have a wonderful strategy, but when team try to snuff that out, and I think plenty have now, at least early on, I think they always struggle a wee bit against some of the top teams. I don't know if they have that plan B just yet.
Yeah, just at the back, I think they've been a little bit leaky at the back, which they weren't last year. Lots of clean sheets last year. Marin McGinty and Glennie particularly were sensational last year. I think they've shipped a few goals early, and maybe that's the frustration that Macquarie's got is right. But I think you make a really, really good point there about the league in terms of how it's moved forward and its structure and your planning and all that sort of stuff. I think more and more teams have got much more data analysis and things like that, and play a certain way and can snuff out. That's why I think there's a lot more clean sheets in the league. I think they can snuff out the other team's strengths, and Dungannon's strength obviously was knocking the ball about. And I think teams have sort of seen that from last year, and are sort of nullifying that a little bit this year. So maybe a little bit of Dungannon dropping off, but also the other teams sort of working them out a little bit.
Plus, consistently they've lacked having Bigger Ama and Alves start every game. That's a big part of their thrust in midfield. So they should get better, but what that is and where their final position will be, I don't know. I think they'll eventually get away from down near the bottom, but right now they're kind of in a skirmish.
Yep.
We look ahead to this weekend and we have our first Bell Classico. It's a Friday night and it is Linfield going down to the Oval. This was a fixture that was dominated by Glentoran until the end of the season when the games really didn't matter. And I just wonder how much Glentoran will feel a bit of confidence going into this, thinking, you know what, we're doing well at the back, we're at home, and we can maybe catch Linfield cold. And I think they will be in this more. Last year there was a bit of this, Glentoran, they're all up for it, and they're gung-ho, and they're able to get the goals, and they're kind of upping their performance levels. And there will be a bit of that, but actually I think Glentoran are going to be a difficult team for Linfield to break down.
Yeah, I think the Glen men out there will probably be thinking that's just exactly what we don't want to hear. We want to hear that we're rubbish and we're just going to go and beat Linfield again once a year. But I think it is a different Glentoran this year. I think there is a little bit more pragmatism about them, and I think they're going into this game. I think it's a really tough one to call. Probably last year, even when Glentoran were winning those games, most people would have said Linfield would have been favourites going into them, both at Windsor and at the Oval. But this one, I think, is a real coin flip here. I'm not sure what way this could go. The Glens both teams have been pretty good at the back, as we've referenced. So, look, it could be a real, and going back to the old days, I think this could be the start of what could be a really good title race between these two. We've talked about Coleraine and possibly Lauren getting in there, but wouldn't it be great just to have this going right to the end of the season? These two going duking it out towards the end of the season.
Lauren and Coleraine are saying we have a little word in on this. We'll not use the words that that start with B and T, but I'm bullish on Glentoran. I think they're going to win 1-0. I think this will be a touchy game. It's likely to be a draw, a 0-0, a 1-1. I'd be flabbergasted if it's some sort of 3-1, 3-2, kind of 3-3 type game. This is a battle between Hubin and Jenkins. At the other end, Fitzpatrick and Alford. And Fitzpatrick and Alford are dangerous. I just think Glentoran will be compact, and I saw a tiny bit of joy for Portadown and big spaces being left at the back. I think I can see Jenkins breaking away. I just wonder, will Glentoran execute in the big moments? Will they be able to convert those corners? All those corners they had against Carrick and they couldn't do it. Can Hubin come in and get a goal within the first 20 minutes? Can Jenkins just find that yard of space and nip it past, Johns? I think they'll get the goal from somewhere, and it'll be a very frustrating night for Linfield. 1-0 Glens.
1-0 to the Glens for you. I'm going to go, I think the Blues will nick it 2-1. I think it'll be a 2-1 to the Blues. I think that man Offord will do exactly as what we've said. He'll pick one up outside the box and ping one into the top corner. That'll be a really tight game. I think it'll be nip and tuck, and I think you're right. It could be a bit tetchy. The two will be clean at it, but sure, what's wrong with that? A bit of rivalries, nothing wrong with that. And I think the Blues might nick it 2-1 for me.
It's it's an important game for both.
Very much so.
And Korean will have, and Lauren as well will have all the eyes on that. I wonder, do they probably want to draw there, don't they?
Draw,
They want to draw for both there. Let's go draw. No, we'll see what happens. Could be a big marker. Who if there's a winner in that game, I think that it'll feel like a really big victory, a boisterous victory, and I'll put a real cherry on the top of their early part of the season because for Glentoran they'll go remain unbeaten, win the derby at home. Here we go. Or for Linfield, they'll say European hangover over. Coleraine, Larne, Glentoran, we're still the champions. Hear us roar. So that there's significant momentum permutations with that game. I will shift to Saturday, 3 o'clock. We have 5, which is nice. Carrick Bangor.
Yeah, Carrick Bangor, obviously looking at Bangor coming up, the promoted team. Obviously, you'd straight away think those are the teams we're going to be looking at. I think obviously we had the game on Tuesday in the County MC last Tuesday. Carrick were pretty comfortable in that game, and again, reference that was two B teams as such, lots of changes. But Carrick were pretty comfortable in that. Arthurs didn't come on until the second half. They made a couple of changes, actually brought on Reece Neal and Arthurs before Carrick actually made a few changes at 0-0. So it looked like Bangor were trying to go for that a little bit more than Carrick were, to be honest with you. But Carrick won the game quite comfortably in the end with 3 goals fairly late on. Given what I've seen from Carrick this year, Bangor have been decent. Don't get me wrong, they've been decent. But I think if Carrick do want to just push on, this is the type of game they need to win. I do think Leck will be a miss here. I think he would have been up top there. He's a real focal point at the minute for them. And as I said, Heatley and Gibson going wide and picking up the scraps or whatever has been very profitable. Plus, obviously, set pieces as well has been very useful for Carrick. So I just think, obviously, I think at home, Carrick will have the advantage there. And given where they've been this season, I think they'll be really looking at this game to try and pick up an R3 and just bolster where they are.
If I was Bangor, I would go into this game trying to be a bit more boring. Don't play this kind of blitzkrieg kind of football that they're approaching where it's all back and forward, blood and thunder. I think you slow this game down, try and lure Carrick out of their traps and catch them maybe with, one of these wide players, try and get a one-on-one. You don't want Arthur's battling these players in the air as much as he's probably well up for it. That will be a tough battle all game between that big back line of Carrick and Arthur's. You want that ball on the ground for him, and you want them running in behind him. So that would be what I think Bangor should do. But I just think this Carrick team is far more savvy, have far more explosion in them. I think you'll win 2-0 here, maybe 3-1. But it'll be a very important win for Carrick. I don't see Bangor winning.
Yeah, also I think I could be wrong, but Lee Finney was sent off in the game. He maybe only got one game, depending on what it was. But if he didn't, then he'll be missing as well from the dugout. So that'll be a big miss for Bangor as well. So that I know that sounds pretty twee, but it could
You'll
be a
have
big
to stand
thing.
all the way behind the wall.
Yeah, well, Carrigan isn't. We actually talked about that on Saturday. It's not a huge loss. I mean, you can go Stuart King.
Stuart King, how's it done? He has the
He
playbook.
used to run up and down and actually actively tried to get banned so as he could run the whole way along. So look, it's not the worst ground in the world to be banned from, but just having that presence in the dugout. We've talked about the analysis and stuff of managers and stuff, things like that. So that will be just another little negative towards Bangor if he is suspended. I say I'm not 100% sure, but look, I think it'll be quite tough. I think Carrick will win 1-0.
A huge game in the battle for fifth, if that's what we're calling it. Cliftonville hosts Ballymena. This is a litmus test for both sides.
Yep, I think so. I think that's exactly what we're talking about here. Cliftonville just on the up a little bit in terms of results. I've said before I wasn't overly impressed with them on Saturday, even though they did say play some decent stuff up to the 18-yard box. And Ballymena's start, it just dropped off a wee bit. So probably they're meeting in the middle of one team going up. The worm is sort of dropped for Ballymena, but it's moving up for Cliftonville. So they're probably equidistant at the minute. It's just which one then sort of kicks on from Saturday. Just at home, Cliftonville might have the edge, but I think that they'll cancel each other out on Saturday.
Yeah, I think 2-2 here, but if Ballymena can be a bit more firm at the back, I think they could win out here thanks to the odd set piece here. Cliftonville just haven't given me 90 minutes of firm, coherent football, and I think Ballymena just have the odd little spark that could ignite, that they could exploit a bit of that lack of, you know, cohesion. So I'm going to say 2-2, but I have a little inkling of a wee 2-1 Ballymena there. Swifts against Crusaders. Interesting battle at the bottom of the pitch. I think this is 1-1 0-0. Weirdly, I mean, if there's a winner here, they'll be wiping their brow. And if there's a loser here, their season is going from bad to worse.
Yeah, it's going a wee bit pear-shaped if there is a loser, and I think that'll dictate what sort of game we get here. These two Crusaders have been sort of gung ho with their young bucks running forward and things like that, but they're being caught at the back, left, right, and centre. They're shipping goals, as we talked about earlier on. Coley in different level probably, but I think Dungannon, just with that win on Saturday, maybe licking their lips here with this back line, maybe getting at them. Down at their place, we referenced it last year how good they were at home last year, and I think there's just getting that win away from home and a wee bit more confidence. The back line keeping a clean sheet, albeit against a sort of 10-man Glenavon who haven't scored too many. Just think that they might be a bit more confident now, and the Crews after a bit of a shellacking on Saturday might need a pick me up. So I think Dungannon might go back to back here and win this one, maybe 2-1.
Actually, I think I'm going to back the Crews here. I think away from home gets a bit of pressure off them, and I don't know if there is the type of players at the minute, or they're playing at a level that could really punish this Crusaders side. Meanwhile, I think the Crews and the Dunlops and the Brydens and the Brooks, if they're playing, I can see them maybe getting a bit of joy, and perhaps Dungannon not having the player. So actually, I'm going to flip-flop 1-0 Crews, I think, there. But maybe not one for the purists. How many are Lauren going to score against Glenavon?
Oh boy.
No, but like legitimately, like maybe McClellan's back, but this could be a Niall Quinn and Paddy Burden's centre back pairing, and neither of them are centre backs really. I know Quinn played plenty of it last year, but or did they play three at the back? Chris Lowe for a bit of defensive party here.
Yeah, it's going to be we talked about Paddy McLaughlin turning it around, but he's got a lot of work to do this week on the training pitch. I think the coaches are going to have to really sort of work out what way they're going in here with this. Do they change his setup and try and play five across the back and try and just flood the midfield and just keep it out for as long as they can and try and keep that Lauren out for as long as they can, as I say, because if Lauren get one early here, the heads will go, here we go again, and it's going to be difficult. So I think that's the crux of this game. If Lauren can break them down. Having said that, Lauren haven't been doing that. Sort of we saw in Bangor at the weekend there. It took them 70 minutes to break through, and it took 2 goals from outside the box. They weren't exactly sort of creating chance after chance. So it may be something similar. I think if Lauren get an early goal here, they could be floodgates, but I think Lauren will win. It just as you sort of said, it's just a matter of how many.
Yeah, I think actually I'll be kind and say 2-1. Perhaps maybe Lauren will take their foot off the gas, and I actually think perhaps Glenavon will really give it a go. If Lauren can get an early goal, that's going to be a problem for Glenavon. But I can see them, like, so far Lauren hasn't blown anybody out of I keep saying that, but they haven't really done it to anybody. So maybe this is the game, but maybe the Inver Vampires will find it difficult, but I think they've got enough quality to see out Glenavon. And it's minor, but you even have Key, who is on loan from Lauren, will be able to play there, and that's another starter for them. So difficult. You could probably see something very similar here. Coleraine go to Portadown. Portadown have somewhat of the framework of going up against Linfield? Can they try and do something very similar? But I think Coleraine are going to pass it around this Portadown team like it's going out of fashion. I think this could be a 4-1.
Yeah, look, what we witnessed at the weekend there with Coleraine, they were slick and gave a lot of indications about what they're trying to do for the rest of the season. Whether they can keep that up, but they've got plenty of quality. We referenced it earlier that you can't mark everybody. So I'm sure Niall Curry will be trying to get the old dots and the whiteboard out to try and say, well, we've got to mark him, we got to mark him. But for me at the minute, the big thing, I think you sort of said it earlier, there's always going to be a sort of spur man for Coleraine at the top here. And if they can pick out the spur man who can then do a wee bit of magic, I think they'll break down the Portadown defence, who haven't been sort of as secure as they were last year. And I think Coleraine should win this game. Maybe not just as comfortable as you're sort of suggesting. Maybe a 2-0. I think maybe they'll be comfortable, but not a 4. I don't think. But
yeah, no, I think that's probably fair. They've had their moments. I've been a big backer of the Portadown back line, but they look slightly fragile at times this season. So yeah, well, a Coleraine win, and I don't think I'm the only one that would be predicting something like that. But hey, you never know. Ali, what a pod. Lots of stuff covered, lots of analysis. It's always great to have you on. As is somewhat tradition when I have you on, a brief chat about cricket. Season's over, but it's not.
No, it isn't. The actual domestic season has just finished this past weekend as well. But England are coming to town next week, come to Dublin. Next week I'll be working at the game. 3 T20 games next week at 1:30 in the afternoon, which is great. We finished nice and early. So I think Sunday sold out. There are a couple of tickets for the other games, but England, anytime England and Ireland face off, it's a big game. So I'm heading to Malahide next week for that. So really looking forward to it. Should be good.
Excellent. Ali, enjoy that. Have a great time, and here continue enjoying this. What's been a wonderful start to the campaign for your Carrick boys. But
hopefully.
Until next time, chat to you soon.
Bye, mate.
Just another Big Topic podcast falling into our laps. I'm sure there's plenty for you to think about, plenty for you to talk about. If you want to share your opinion with me, there's plenty of ways to do that. You can email me. It's kickandmatch@gmail.co.uk. You can comment underneath this podcast on Spotify. You can get in touch, chat away there, or you can contact me across various different social medias. It's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Just search for Kick and Match. You'll find it there. Until next time, I'll chat to you soon.